You to have a seat. Good morning and welcome. We are just waiting for our live stream connection to be live. We're glad that you're here. You're in for a treat if you have not yet seen the video. Okay, Kathy's going to go first. All right. As soon as we have word that our live stream is up and running, a reminder that we'll do a history presentation next week after the service. Carl Adler, is that right? Who is scheduled to be here on March 20th, because of COVID-related issues, will not be here in March. We're hoping that there will be another time in the future that he will come back to visit us, and we'll be sure to let people know when that happens. And then there was going to be a tri-church musical event in March. Do you remember the date? 18th. March 18th. That has been canceled as a tri-church event. We're inviting those congregations at Plank Road and in Webster to join the Prism concert that'll take place the end of April. And you heard today, Joseph, April 1st, 7 p.m. Tickets are available in the narthex. It's free. And it's a great story, in case you haven't heard. Are we live, Andy?
We are. Yes, there's several people on Facebook. YouTube doesn't seem to be syncing with us.
All right, it might not be working, because I saw some people on Facebook today that normally are on YouTube, so maybe there was... All right, so we're going to begin. Cathy Forney is going to read a poem that Ann Rasbeck has written. I'm just going to say, you might want to step at the pulpit. Yep.
Good morning. The poem I'm reading was written by Ann Rasbeck in 2000. My church, my dear old church. This little white Bethlehem church was built in 1922, and it's still a good place for me and you. Folks let their faith lead them to build with hard work, dedication, gifts, and self-will. Modest it was, with 2 small rooms, down and up, for classes, altar cloths, communion wafers, and cup. Some Sunday school classes met in the church pews, many below in areas enclosed by different hues. The church was not heated during the week, but a wood-burning stove did the one-room heat. For catechism, choirs, men's and ladies' get-togethers. Early arrivals tended the stove during cold weather. Family ties were important and very abundant, always happy to serve and eat delicious dinners. These active groups were important for holding us together. The Sunday school program was held on Christmas Eve night as nervous children spoke, acted, and sang with all their might. The highlight of the evening was an orange and hard candy, but more. The chocolate drops were especially dandy. Confirmation was always held on Palm Sunday after years of memorizing the catechism meanings. In June, there was a Children's Day show where all participated in their finest new clothes. The Sunday school church picnic was a big pleasure. Kids riding to Powder Mills on a truck was a treasure. Games galore, hot salads, and coconut cake, often more than one piece we did take. Luther League was fun for all of our youth. It was always special to be with the group. During the World Wars, it was especially tough. Being German Lutherans was not always a plus. Off to the war they went without choice, more than 30 folks. Some did not return, now with the heavenly hosts. In 1962, we redid the lower level with many helping men. Ladies' clam chowder raised many $1, and then fellowship fish dinners bought chairs and tables. Everyone supported or helped as they were able. Pastors did come, and some soon went. But at times we had peaked and good messages were sent. God put us to the test, and those who were faithful held this church together for all of the people. 1969 brought new planning, and in 1972 a new Sunday school was added. It's amazing how we'd grown, and folks accepted our tradition. For a few years, things did not always please the members. So folks dropped away, and it was hard. I remember. From 1975 to 77, we did survive without a pastor. It was difficult for all, and almost a disaster. Pastor Garner's arrival in 1977 was our best gift. It was needed to get folks active and worship a lift. It didn't take long to see his special touch, for many got involved, and then there was much activity everywhere. Enthusiasm and attendance was better. Members made it to church in all kinds of weather. Each year there was plenty that excited us all. Assistance was needed, so we sent a call. Doreen, Craig, and Julie were all fine assistants. Thursday evening services were held for those who were distant. We're thankful Jane Floyd joined us a few years later. She was lively, ambitious, and added much to the worship. Sunday school was well organized, fine helpers overflowing, youth programs for all ages expanded and growing. They were helpful to others. They went to conventions. Organists, choirs, bells provided music and got attention. We helped St. Timothy's, Advent House, and Safe Journey got started, gave a van to a church, and funds to agencies for the downhearted. A sabbatical gave Pastor time to refresh. He spent time working on his doctorate with quiet zest. We were thankful he chose this path to pursue, as Pastor Satterlee filled in while his dream came true. More changes to our building came in 1994. An elevator, new bathrooms for handicapped, and more. New foyer on Perrin Street, and new hall with stairs on each end to keep traffic flowing easily, a much better trend. In recent years, the basement became very bright. Walls, woodwork, ceiling, and great new lights. It cheers us up at coffee hour and meetings when we should be friendly and new folks greeting. Now off to another start to add space for the plenty who come to worship. And we're glad there are many. A variety of, a variety of unique pastors have graced our course, working with some groups who were very diverse. But the Lord has held us close, and many did remain. We're thankful for the blessed who follow in his train. As I read old reports to complete this history poem, I remember each year Pastor Garner kept repeating this tone: greet strangers and say hello to others you do not know. Introduce them to others to help Bethlehem's warmth show. In this little white church, we've been graced by the past and surely the faithful will be here till the last. For God's goodness abounds when we follow his way. May God bless Bethlehem until he calls us all home one day.
Thank you, Kathy. That was beautiful. I will say.
Thank Ann Rasbeck.
Yeah, Ann Rasbeck. Thank you, Ann. I will say that there are still some days in the winter that we don't have heat in the sanctuary, in the building. Every winter, there are some days. I think we are ready for the highlight reel. Is that correct? Okay, so we're going to watch the highlight reel, which is made up of snippets of longer interviews that have been that were held over several years leading up to this time. You will recognize some familiar faces, many of you. These are there's every single person you see here. There are longer extended interviews with each of them, and those are all available for viewing on the computers and the narthex. And I know Bob can share other ways that you can view those, but you can hear and see more. This is just sort of a highlight of all of those pieces. So, longer than a trailer though.
The time has come for us to see, if we recall of BLC. Ah, yes, I remember it well. When did we join and make our mark? Can we recall who lit the spark? Ah, yes, I remember it well.
I moved a lot when I was growing up, and we never lived near extended family. So the church became my family, every church that we went to. And so I moved here and I didn't know anybody but my husband. We were in our 20s. I had a new baby, and I came out, and it was a small country church in Fairport, and Pastor Garner met me, and then the next time I came, he remembered my name, and that was really important to me, that he seemed to, he had a gift of that. Mm-hmm. So that was nice, and I found my family. Mm-hmm. So that was nice.
A lot different from your church of today. There were families, farmers, and small, hard-working people, not so many business people and everything that your churches have today, because life was different back then. So that's basically, the church was family, and we had a good congregation starting. So I think basically it has remained a family church too. So.
Bethlehem is and always has been its people. When you hear from folks who are new to the community, why did you come or why did you keep coming back, it is almost always not just the people, but specific people. Folks can name who it was that invited them, who it was that greeted them at coffee hour, who it was that shared their hymnal in the pew.
When I think of the church, I think of people, and the person who stands out the most was a man named Larry Mosier, and he was married to Edith. And he had the wonderful ability to welcome you from his heart.
First person that spoke to me, I had the children sitting with me in church, and when church was over, the first person that came up to welcome me to the church was Al Volks, artist Volks' husband. Mm-hmm. And I've never forgotten that moment. He was special to me from that moment on.
So we were looking, and our good friends Tom and Marcy Adams. Marcy grew up Lutheran, and she said, I found a wonderful church in Fairport. Why don't you come and visit? And we did. And we we lived in the city. And so he said, well, it was nice. It was a nice place, nice people, but we live in the city. This is Fairport. And so we kept looking. And 6 months later, we came back, and Pastor Garner, we walked through the door, and Pastor Garner said, Jim, Donna, where you been? And we haven't left.
Drevy Lowry lived right up the street from me that was a member here. And she suggested we go to her church one day. So we did, and that was in 1980, and we stayed ever since.
And I knew about Bethlehem Lutheran Church previously, had never been a member here, and I started coming in, and I was interested in joining the choir, and was much encouraged by Mark Fink, as a matter of fact. So I started singing in the choir, and I've been here ever since.
One of my first things was when the kids, probably choir, because they used to have a pizza party on Saturday. They'd have a Saturday practice and they have a pizza party. And someone said, well, gee, would you help? And I walk in, and there's this lady I don't know named Cece Butel, and we became close friends, and she was the first person who really got to know here. And it was fun.
Cece and Larry Mosier?
Yeah.
Now, how could you miss Larry?
There's much to learn of you and me, recalling a memory. Ah, yes, I remember it well. The thoughts are good, I'm awfully fond, just wish they'd stay, but now they're gone. Ah, yes, I remember it well.
Very friendly. I remember Celia Topping coming up the very first time we were here and greeting us. And since that, we've become very good friends with the Toppings.
It was 1985. Our son was 2.5, and Linda Croft promptly invited him into the 2.5-year-old Sunday school class. And Carrie Templeton was the choir director and promptly invited our 2 daughters to join choir. Friends from Incarnate Word had changed to Bethlehem a few years before, lived in Fairport.
Yeah. A friend happened to be the council president at the time in Bethlehem. When we walked in the door, we were greeted and so forth, and he came and sat with us. He handed me a box of envelopes and said, "Welcome aboard."
That was Lee Abel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right around the time when I was called to Bethlehem, one of the things, Pastor Hoffman sent me an email one day, and she said, so some parishioners have offered for you to come and live with them while you find a place, since you're kind of moving in a hurry. And it's kind of a little strange to be living with your parishioners. But it was Lori and Keith Nikoloff, whose son Matthew, another pastor and child of this congregation, who I'd gone to seminary with. So it was almost like we were welcomed into an extended family that we never knew we had.
And the thing that I like most about BLC is the fact that there are people whom I knew when I was a little girl who are still members, some of them.
Well, to the best of my memory, I was about 4, so we were still the white and gray church back then with the big wheelchair ramp out front. The sanctuary had not been flipped yet, so I lived through the transition of the sanctuary where we had church in the basement for a while. But it was very much the same. It was still home. It was a family away from family. So, the heart of BLC hasn't changed.
Bethlehem became my family, which was completely obvious when Bob died in May, and there were 300 or 400 people at calling hours. You know, it's just amazing. That is why I stay and why I come back.
I make a point that that's important, I think, for us, that to illustrate the magnitude of how much we believe in this church and this family that we have here. We've never lived in Fairport, ever. We raised our family in the city, and we live in Geneseo now. St. Timothy's is down the road, 5-minute drive away, and we drive past it every Sunday to still come here. When we moved down to Geneseo 16 years ago, we talked about it. We couldn't make the break. We didn't want to leave our family. And I think that's a strong statement for the both of us to illustrate the impact that it's had on our lives.
A country church it used to be, but then we grew just like a tree. Ah, yes, I remember it well. We burst our seams and had to grow. We're changing fast, or is it slow? Ah, yes, I remember it well.
When Bethlehem was in the call process to call Pastor Hoffman, and I was on Synod staff, and I remember coming on a Thursday night for worship in the summer. I remember that it was Holy Trinity Sunday. I don't know why. Well, I preached. I think that's probably why I remember that. And I remember that I walked into the sanctuary, and I couldn't believe how joyous and wonderful the opening hymn was. Having traveled and sung in a lot of different congregations around the Synod, it felt so familiar and so wonderful to hear that great singing. So that's my very, very first memory of Bethlehem, and I still think of that.
The music, and it was not just the music of the choir or the organ, which was absolutely wonderful. I was extremely impressed by the congregational singing. We belonged to other churches, and the singing was okay, but it usually was a few individuals. At this church, the whole congregation
really sings. And Pastor Hoffman mentioned that too. She was like, wow, everybody really sings.
It's such a part of worship, and it's really uplifting. And the people here that have been here their whole life may not even realize that that's unique. A tremendous amount of talent here. People that play instruments, who sing, and that contributes to the effectiveness of adding that to worship. It's like if you need a brass quartet, you usually can get people out of the congregation to put together a brass quartet. It's quite nice. I think there was just a flute trio not too long ago, and for special music, and they were all church members. It's beautiful.
Music here at Bethlehem far exceeds the expectations or what one could even hope to have.
It was that deciding to teach a few people at Bethlehem how to play mountain dulcimer that the group started here. It really started with Rich and his ability to play mountain dulcimer and make them. And as you can imagine, well, Stradivarius violins are just wonderful. We kid Rich that most of the group has Tousleys. And they're just special because they're Tousleys. Mm-hmm. And he numbers them all, and they know which number they have. And
we designed and contracted for the A. David Moore organ that now graces our sanctuary. And in the meantime, because that organ took almost 4 years to build, in the meantime, Fred Lurch, one of the saints of the parish here, who was the head engineer at the American Can Company, and Mark Coffey built a platform, rejigged the organ so the pipe sat on top of the platform, the choir sat underneath the platform, And that was our music program for a number of years while we waited for our A. David Moore organ to come in. So
Down when we did Joseph 2 times. That was
That was
pretty
unique.
cool, and that was unique.
Again, many churches would not have the talent to pull that off. This one did. It required an awful lot of time, and they knew that up front when I explained it to them. But I did ask them after we did it, so now that we've done it, did you really realize what was involved? They said, no, but we wouldn't change a thing. They had a wonderful time doing it. It was an outreach for many brought their friends to the church, so there were people who came to the church who normally wouldn't. It was just a very good experience. Obviously, because we did it twice.
Yeah.
We did it 5 years later. Again, and usually you don't do that.
And part of that was music, so we invested a lot of energy, a lot of money, a lot of our resources, a lot of our time into good musicians leading good music to support good worship.
The times were good, the time has passed, but we recall just not as fast. Ah, yes, I remember it well. We think we know, or take a guess, our memory fades, we acquiesce. Ah, yes, I remember it well.
The church is God's people, and how buildings change, God's people don't change, and how we have to reach out and to say we respect our past, but we have to step out into the future. And we had over 200 people at that congregational meeting, probably more than we've ever had before or since, and they voted overwhelmingly, 200 and something to 30, to go ahead with the vote, to go ahead with the change. That is one of, to my way of thinking, that is one of the most critical moments of my ministry here. That day, the parish changed. Again, we respected so dearly the elders of this parish, but we said the future needs us to change. And as I look back on my 31 years here, that was one of the most critical pieces that ever happened at this place. We build on the past, but we step forward into the future. So
1995, that was a big year. I joined the church here, married Susan with Pastor Garner officiating, and got involved in the fellowship committee. At that point in time, Paul and Gwen Ness were really key in keeping that whole committee going. And so I was impressed with all of the committees, but especially them, because they put heart and soul into what they were doing, and they pulled us right in. Into that.
I've been coming to this church since 1956. My wife and I was married in 1957 in this church. She was born and brought up in this church, was baptized in this church. She's 89 years old. And I'm 83, so I married an old lady.
So the worship has always been a highlight. I think worship has always been important to me throughout my life. And I like the fact, well, I've enjoyed all kinds of worship. I do enjoy contemporary worship, but I enjoy the liturgy that we have here. I know a lot of people get tired of the liturgy and say that it's repetitious, and, you know, they just come, it's just do it over and over. But every single word just has powerful meaning to me. I reflect on the liturgy all during the week. I think about the words all week long. And, you know, I love cutting grass because I can sing the liturgy. It doesn't bother the neighbors then.
I always liked the pastors that we had, and of course I'm not a musical person, but I enjoy
listening to the choir sing or other people. We have quite a variety now of people doing different things during, I almost said mass, during worship.
Established congregation, healthy congregation, strong leadership. It was a great place for me to be able to get involved, and for my first call, a chance to be able to see what a healthy congregation looks like, to be connected and to learn. And one of the things I wanted to learn more about was kind of just the administration side, and wow, did I learn a lot. Just very strong administration with Pastor Garner specifically, but also just all the lay leadership also. Never before or since have I seen a congregation run like this congregation, where committees have like chairs and council liaisons and other people on it. Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
Well, the church was lovely, pretty church, and the people were friendly, and I liked what the Lutheran principles were, and so I've been coming ever since.
There were many, many people our age, with kids our age, and all that sort of thing, and it was just, we were all in the same boat, and it was fun. I mean, it was really fun then.
Everybody was friendly, and there were a lot of, at that time Parrington was booming, a lot of people moving in, so there was a lot of activity church-wise and community-wise.
Well, we joined BLC in 1989. We had recently moved here from California, although I'm from here, so we were coming back home. And we had just had our first child, so I think like some people do, we decided a church was something we wanted to be a part of. Something we did, maybe a little humorous, we drove around town looking at churches, and if we liked the door, we would go in and have a look inside. So we drove by here, we liked the door, which actually we don't have anymore. It was on the older structure, and we met Pastor Garner and joined up, and one of our first things was to get our son baptized. I remember, when we joined, it was after they had rotated the sanctuary 90 degrees, but before they did any other additions beyond that. Something I remember is, it was full enough on Sundays that people would be lined up in the hallway on folding chairs, craning their necks to look in the door. That's a good problem to have, and it just seemed like a place where the people were nice.
We love our church, its family. We're one with Christ so happily. Ah, yes, I remember it well. Outside our walls, where there is need, we take our help, but never greed. Ah, yes, I remember it well. We all have thoughts of church. Bethlehem comes first. What a blessed place, recollect, but worse. We try to think, it takes all day, but then it comes in its own way. Ah, yes, I remember it
It's a little bit bittersweet to see some of those faces and hear some of those voices. This is probably the second or third time I've seen that, and I just have to say what strikes me is what a difference you all make to each other. And just listening again to all of the names that people identified about who made a connection, who invited someone, who asked someone. You all make a difference in the life of the congregation. So I hope that of all of the things that you take in from seeing that, that is one of the things that you remember. Bethlehem is you. Thank you for being here and joining us today. There will be another history presentation next Sunday at 10:15, same exact way here in the sanctuary, live stream for people at home. And have a great day. Thank you.